Hey, good morning. What's up? This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com. It is Sunday, September 22nd, 2024. Norman, London. Mr. Augello in beautiful Buffalo, New York. Leafs training camp has begun. The preseason has begun. Tonight, it's Leafs Senators, first of two in a row with the Capital Gang to just kind of let things out a little bit, to find their way, get their bearings, and start playing some hockey. You've got to be excited, Michael. Good morning.
Good morning, Norm. I'm always excited when the hockey season gets started, and the Prospects Challenge. There were 6 NHL teams in Buffalo, so that was busy. And the Leafs had their little prospect soiree in La Belle Provence, not province, but against the Habs last weekend, and then the openings of training camp, and now we get into preseason games. I was at Buffalo, Pittsburgh last night, and the Leafs open their preseason tonight against the Sens. So, yeah, I mean, now it's the waiting toward games of consequence, and that will occur in a couple weeks.
So everybody getting acclimated, introducing one another, being kind of nice and just cordial, and everybody's refreshed with training camp underway. And there's a lot of talk and a lot of niceties spread and shared, but things are going to get real here really, really quick. What did you take away from the first couple of days, the initial introductory interviews with players, media, coaches, and stuff like that? And how do you think the tone has been or will be set from the first few days at training camp, and the things that players were saying about what they'd like to do for the season ahead?
Well, I mean, I saw that there was a little bit of criticism, and I think it's unfair where players are talking about they want to win the Stanley Cup. And I mean, obviously the Leafs record over the last 8 years is can't get out of the first round. So there was some criticism about that. And it says, what do you expect these players to do? Say, we want to make the second round. I mean, shut up. It's like, it's idiotic. It's like this guy Allen in the chat, who you should ban because he's a moron. But it's like, so I mean, if you're a player, you're going to strive to win the whole thing. Whether you're good enough to do it, you leave that up to chance. You all you can do is try your best. It's up to the general manager to assemble a team that is good enough. It is up to the coach to organize that talent and be able to put the players in the best position to win.
Right.
But in the end, it's up to the players, and we know, and I've been very critical of the core group that they have not come through at most of the time over the last 8 years. So it's up to them. And, some of the things that came out of Wednesday's introductory press conferences at training camp, we're going to see whether they stick like they didn't do last year in regards to William Nylander. We'll talk about that in a minute, or whether they just go resort back to, the comfortable situations of the previous years, and who knows whether things will change.
This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com. Ford employee pricing is 1 week to go. Then it is gone for the rest of the year. Who knows? It may not return in 2025. The big thing about Ford employee pricing, you can get the largest discount on qualified cars that you'll ever get. You will get an incentive that mirrors what I would get once a year if I chose to purchase a car through Ford. So the discounts are absolutely egregious. Bronco Sport, Escape, F-150. You got to get at me over the next 7 days up until September 30th to get your discount. We can shake hands. I can hand you some keys to an amazing vehicle, and we can continue our relationship beyond the podcast, and you'll be supporting Mike and myself in the process. Norman.james@oakridgeford.com. You can get at me through the podcast, through the socials. I would love to hear from you folks. It would mean a lot to me if I could get you on the road in an F-150, a Ford, even a pre-owned car. I'm here to help. I get OGs and Convers reaching out to me just about every single day for consultation, questions, and ultimately we end up doing deals. And without you, we really couldn't be here. So I know that Mike and I are certainly appreciative, and Oak Ridge Ford as well. Don't forget to like the content, subscribe to the channel. Our goal for 2024, 2025 is 5,000 subs. So that's a lot of work between now and whenever the Leafs wrap up. So let's get at it, guys. Hit that subscribe button and we shall rock and roll. So Craig Berube's got a lot to say about the goaltending situation, bringing up Matt Murray. You'd think it was Joseph Woll, Anthony Stolarz. Those are going to be the guys. And then he drops Matt Murray. So, is he envisioning like a trifecta here, competing for opportunities between the pipes? Or what, Mike? Like, why bring up Matt Murray when he was essentially just insurance? Leave him alone, keep him quiet. If you need him, you dust him off, you bring him in. However,
I think it was brought up in the context of the fact, and this is a concern, Wall has had injury issues. He has not played more. I think his total games in the NHL is less than 40. He's never played more than like 26 or 27 games. Stolarz has been a backup most of his career. He's never played more than 27 or 28 games. So, the question was, to Berube, whether you're concerned about that. And he, I don't think he said he was, but did bring up Matt Murray in the mention of the goalies. Now, that was a little surprising because he's sort of off the radar. It was even surprising that he got signed to a 1-year contract. But, coming off the double hip surgery, apparently he is, looked really well. I think it was Carter Hutton or some other former NHL goaltender who said he's never seen Murray look as good as he did. So, the concern there is, and, goaltending is needed around this league. And especially Vancouver, their situation where Thatcher Demko is out. They don't know how long he's going to be out. Artur Svilov's their backup who played in the playoffs last year. He's injured. I don't think there's an ETA in terms of him coming back. They've signed Kevin Lankinen, a former Chicago, former Nashville goaltender, as a sort of stopgap. Who's to say that they won't be looking for goaltending that teams place on waivers in early October, which means, Detroit's got 4 goalies. Buffalo's got James Reimer as a number 3. Does that mean if the Leafs think that Matt Murray is back to being somebody who could play NHL games, and we know his Stanley Cup credentials, do you want to risk putting him on waivers? And that's a situation where, could you justify, or could you say, well, he's still recovering from the hip situations. We'll put him on LTIR. That's possible. But if he plays preseason games, then that pretty much is out the window. So, will the Leafs carry 3 goalies like they did at the end of the year when they were afraid to send Martin Jones down? Or will they risk it and do what they did at the beginning of last season and roll the dice, and they put Jones through waivers and he cleared, but based on how he played, he probably shouldn't have cleared, and that's a risk. So it's a question. And, if Woll gets hurt or if Stolarz doesn't play as well as expected, then you might need to tap Matt Murray or even Dennis Hildeby down with the Marlies, and that, will complicate the situation goal for the Leafs.
Well, you can't dress 3 goalies. So what the hell do you do with Murray? Where does he go? How does he stay hot? How does he stay ready? Where do you draw upon this guy? And, how can you configure a full roster that isn't getting overcrowded by dead weight or guys who you might use sporadically here and there?
It isn't ideal. I know that Buffalo did it last year where they carried Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Devin Levi, and Eric Comrie. And they didn't want to risk sending Comrie down to Rochester, so they kept 3 goalies on the roster. Mm-hmm. Now, they had tons of cap space, so the salary, which, Comrie, Levi was on an entry-level contract. Comrie was making like $1.8 million. That wasn't a factor with the Leafs. It's going to be a tight squeeze. But Murray's only making $875,000, and Wall is making less than $800,000. So you could conceivably carry the three goaltenders with not a lot of cap ramifications. The issue with three goalies is morning skates and practices where, goaltender, you usually have one goalie on one end, one goalie at the other end, getting a full work. And with Buffalo, they would, the goalie who wasn't starting would be in there half the time, and the third stringer would hop in. It's workable. It's not ideal, but it's workable. So if they decide to keep three goalies on the NHL roster, Berube I think he'll deal with it, but it's a possibility. We don't know.
That's interesting, not intriguing. If it benefits the Maple Leafs in any which way or shape or form, then I'm on board for it. Jake McCabe wants to stay in Toronto. John Tavares wants to finish his career a Maple Leaf. Nick Robertson says he's happy to be back with the Leafs. We'll take that for what it could really mean. We interpret it however which way you want.
Right.
Again, this is the opportunity to break the ice and get to know one another, media, players, coaches, and then it's just off to the races, earning spots and getting down to the business of competing and doing really well in the season ahead. I mean, McCabe wanting to be with the Leafs, Tavares wanting to finish his career with the Maple Leafs, no longer the captain. Mitch Marner not saying a hell of a lot about his contractual status, and he's kind of laid the groundwork. We'll see if we can all adhere to his wishes to kind of keep that on the side burner. What else stands out to you? Was there any little nugget that, maybe we're glossing over that might come to be a bigger issue, whether good, bad, or ugly?
Well, I'll mention the contract stuff in a minute. I think the biggest potential, and I can understand people being cynical about it because last year the experiment lasted a grand total of 2 games, and that was William Nylander being moved to center. Now, remember, he was drafted as a center. He played center in the SHL for half a season. He came over to the Marlies, I think, in January of 2015, and he played center at the AHL level. Mm-hmm. When he came up with the Leafs under Babcock immediately moved him to the wing because he wasn't defensively sound enough, and he wasn't. And now, remember, I believe he's 27 years old. He's improved defensively. He's not great defensively, but I think this is a thought that if I'm paying you $11.5 million and I have an aging John Tavares who may be converted to a winger down the line, he may be the third line center this year, maybe second line center, depending on how long this experiment works. I mean, we're going to take a long look at you at center and see if you can actually play it, because the benefit of him playing up the middle with his speed, with his scoring ability, as a 1-2 punch with Matthews, I mean, that's a game changer. Now, do I think it's going to work? I don't know. Do I think it could work? Sure. He's just got to be more conscientious about it. Right. So, I mean, I think it's worth looking at throughout the preseason and even early in the regular season, and then at like the 20-game mark, if clearly he's getting caught defensively or it's not for him, then you can always go back to where you were and either move Domi to third line, move Tavares up to second line center, or do something else. But it's worth looking at, and it's worth giving a lengthy opportunity to, and not a snap judgment like 2 games like Sheldon Keefe did last year, and then he put him right back on the wing.
That was the past. We're moving forward. Craig Berube is now the guy in charge, and if he proclaims to know what he's doing, he really should give this guy an opportunity to do what he needs to do to do well in that spot. Mike, look, William Nylander's one of the highest paid forwards in the league, one of the best goal scorers in the league, has really elevated his game over the last few years amid a lot of criticism and, a lot of, I guess, cantankerous opinion over just what he might become. And he's really pounded through that. So to his credit, he's at a different place and playing at a clip he never has before. Why the hell can't he evolve into an effective center? I mean, he's a really, really talented guy. And now is the time with a potential opening there, and a new head coach who's looking at things in a different way. All the power to William Nylander. The key will be opportunity, right? You can't just, as you alluded to, Sheldon Keefe and the 2 games. For whatever reason, William Nylander, he didn't either trust him there or it just wasn't committed enough to that experiment. You got to give the guy some time. And there was going to be some hiccups along the way. But at the end of the day, if he can assimilate properly and become an effective player, and in such a dynamic position, all the better for his career. And certainly it'll benefit the Maple Leafs.
Well, and I can't say whether the contractual situation last September had anything to do with the position switch. But, just think of it this way. He's going into the walk year of his contract. He's going into a year where it's going to make or break his future, and they're going to ask him to play up the middle. Now, maybe they decided we'll put him in his comfort zone, and he had a great year, and he earned the 8-year contract. Now he's got the security of the 8-year deal, $11.5 million. He's, now okay, if you want me to play more responsible defensively, if you want me to be a two-way guy, not two-way in a sense of like a Patrice Bergeron where he's a shutdown guy, but just a little more responsible at the cost of a few points. Okay, I'm being paid 11.5. My future is locked in place. If you want me to do that for the team, I'll do that for the team. So if that's the mindset, then I think it's an experiment worth trying. Do I know if it's going to work? No. I mean,
does Nylander want to be a center? Is that part of his aspiration as an NHLer, kind of hitting the zenith of his career?
I think he's capable of playing center. So do I know if he wants it or not? No. I mean, a lot of people, and Brian in the chat was bringing up his brother Alex. Right. Alex is on an AHL deal. There was a story that came out, I think it was Kevin McGran, or I can't remember who wrote it. I apologize. That Alex Nylander signed an AHL contract with Toronto rather than taking NHL deals with other teams because he wanted to play in Toronto. He thought he could earn a deal here. He wanted to play with his brother. Okay. I mean, there's a possibility he gets signed to an NHL contract. There's a possibility, maybe he starts the year at the Marlies and plays really well and earns an NHL contract. And then ends up playing with his brother. I mean, stranger things have happened. So I think it's an experiment that is worth trying. Now, Brian also in the chat, I think, was the one who mentioned Marner playing at center. Marner played in London at center for a time, but then the big year when they won the Memorial Cup, he played with Matthew Tkachuk and Christian Dvorak playing center. So he's been primarily a winger for almost all of his NHL career, and frankly, he's too small to play center. I mean, I think Nylander is a bigger body. He's 6 foot, 200 some odd pounds. He can take the pounding, and he's got the speed. So the factors are there for him to be able to play center. Whether he can do it effectively is a question. And if you have a 1-2-3 of Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, that in the division, I mean, that might be the best or second best.
Speaking of Tavares, I want to talk about him and how he'd like to complete what's been a really amazing career and finish what he hasn't really fully accomplished in Toronto if he's lucky to do so. Also, Jake McCabe's got a couple of things to say about what he would like to do with his next contract and where he would like to sign it. But Michael Matthew, certain OG going back, how many years now, Mike, to 2018? You're one of the originals. Thanks for being with us, my friend. I really want to hear about the forwards in the bottom six vying for a spot. So many possibilities. So, Mike?
Yeah, Michael Matthew probably goes back to the hook on AM 900 back at okay, so bottom six. If Tavares is moved down to the third line, it gives the sort of the bottom six. It's more of a top 9 fourth line type of situation rather than top six, bottom six. It lengthens the lineup, which is the reason why it's big. We're not going to know really where that's going to go until late in training camp. I mean, I know tonight Max Pacioretty is playing. We don't know who he's going to play with. He could play with Tavares. He could play, so we have to see where he slots in. If he's secretly signed to a contract and he's only on a PTO for cap reasons, you would think that he's not going to be, Max Pacioretty, if you're signing him, he's not going to be a fourth liner. He's going to be somebody who's going to play a little higher in the lineup, probably not in the top six, because I don't think his surgically repaired Achilles could take, 15, 16, 17 minutes a night, but at 11, 12, maybe, and he could fit in. But it's a question of how they sort of structure that bottom six. David Kampf could be a fourth liner, but in certain circumstances, he could be a third liner. So you don't know how Berube is going to set up this lineup. I mean, in my estimation, Ryan Reeves shouldn't be on the team. He's probably going to be the 13th forward. He's probably not going to play on most nights, and they'll just, they'll unveil him like the Undertaker coming out of the crypt in a WWE. They'll just play, and so I mean, but it does not take advantage of the skill of players like Nick Robertson to play on the fourth line. If you're going to do that, you may as well trade him. He needs to play in the top nine. He needs to play in a scoring role because he's a scorer.
But there are only so many spots to be divvied up, and there are tons of bodies. So that's the beauty of preseason. And Craig Berube wants to see it. Like who wants it? Who's going to compete? Who's going to finish their checks? Who's going to play a complete shift? And make me want to, have these guys go back over the boards for more because of the possibilities and their capability of proving, right? This is a good problem for the Maple Leafs to have. You have more bodies than you really need. So who's going to win those spots? And the next few weeks are going to be a real eye opener as to who does earn those spots, at least initially, and who's going to be left on the outside looking in.
Well, think of it this way. If you break it down position by position, say Nylander starts the season at center. So up the middle, you have Matthews, Nylander, Tavares. Okay. On the right wing, since Nylander has moved over to center, now your three right wingers are likely Marner on the top line with Matthews, Max Domi, who Berube said was going to play with Nylander, and Calle Jarnkrok. On the left side, if you buy into the fact that Pacioretty is going to play a top nine role, then it could be Matthew Nyes on the top line, Nick Robertson on the second line, and then Pacioretty or Bobby McMahon on the third line, and vice versa on the fourth line. So your fourth line could be Bobby McMahon, David Kampf, and Ryan Reeves, or Spike, we've had this argument for a while. You find, that's your belief that you don't think he's a fit. I think he's got a ton of talent. He's got a ton of scoring talent. And if eventually he's going to end up not on the Leafs, giving him a scoring role and letting him score, and it increases his value. Clearly, there was not a trade out there where somebody was going to give the Leafs what they think he is worth. So, they can accentuate the positive, get him to score some goals, and then, then maybe trade him later on. But right now,
Spike 11, honorary OG, convert for sure, that Nick Robertson has no place in the top six and should be traded. Easier said than done. And that remains to be seen. If he puts himself in a position to be wanted more by other teams and the Leafs can leverage that, then Spike 11 may indeed get his wish, Michael.
Yes. Now, Connor Dewar is injured. So he's probably starting the season on LTIR, or maybe he comes off of that late in training camp, but it doesn't sound like they're expecting him to be available. Fraser Minten had an unfortunate high ankle sprain and the last game in Montreal, so him challenging for a spot likely is not going to happen. He probably won't. He'll probably start the season after he recovers with the Marlies. I mean, Pontus Holmberg probably is your 12th, 13th forward, figuring on the fourth line. So that gives you 13 forwards there. So your potential, your fourth line could be Bobby McMahon, David Kampf, and Pontus Holmberg. That's not bad.
No.
You throw in Ryan Reeves against teams that try to get physical. There are now you notice the name I didn't mention, which was Easton Cowan. If Easton Cowan is not playing a top 9 role,
right, no point.
He's back in London.
Can I ask a question? Craig Berube, what does he want out of his fourth line? And of the guys you just mentioned, ready to deliver on a more energized, more physical, more fully capable mandate as part of a line that is supposed to provide those things, and maybe hadn't always done that in the past.
I think he wants grind. I think he wants accountability. I think he wants what we didn't get last year from the fourth line early on, when every time they stepped on the ice, and that's why I'm sorry, Brian, but every time Ryan Reeves stepped on the ice in the first half of the year, the puck ended up in the Leafs net. It was better in the second half, but he was a complete and utter liability.
So he's in the press box. He's watching.
Right. But so, I think he wants defensive responsibility, effort, grind, and accountability. Okay. And if your fourth line is McMahon, Kampf, and Holmberg, I think you get that. Mm-hmm. Now, like I said, if Cowan is playing fourth line, maybe they keep him for the 9 games. Maybe they spot Pacioretty and they give Cowan 9 games. And I'm going to bring up the name that you just mentioned, because Craig Berube brought up Nikita Grabyankin, the Russian, who was a Dubas draft pick, I think it was a 5th round pick, played in the KHL last year. I think he's 21 or 22 years old. I was just looking it up here. He is 21. Okay. He's 6'2", 210 pounds. Berube described him basically as a Russian missile. And he's he's physical. He's got some scoring ability. He scored nearly almost 20 goals in the KHL last year for one of their better teams, Magnitogorsk. So, I mean, not to say that he's going to make the team out of training camp, but this is a guy who is waiver exempt, so he could start with the Marlies. And if he plays well, then he could be a guy that gets called up. I mean, they've been impressed with him, his physicality, his size. It was sort of one of those diamond in the rough type of players that I know that a lot of people don't like Kyle Dubas, but some of his lower round picks have turned out to be pretty good young prospects. So I will obviously be tracking Grabankin when he plays for the Marlies, but he's on the radar. So is Topi Niemelä in terms of the defense. So there are battles in training camp. There are spots that that young players could potentially win. There'll probably be some necessary thinning of the herd in terms of trading off a player with salary or waiving a player with salary, like maybe Connor Timmins. We'll see how that goes along when it comes to these players playing in training camp.
Yeah, some of these guys would like to be a part of the Maple Leafs and may not end up staying due to the fact there's just too many guys like them and a few that are slightly better, but that's professional sports. John Tavares and the things he said about finishing his career in Toronto. Obviously, he's a local guy, former captain, handed the C over to Austin Matthews for a variety of reasons. It just seemed like the natural thing to do, a top 3 player in the league. Why isn't he the captain of the biggest hockey team in the league? Well, John Tavares had the mantle for a while. Now it's Austin Matthews' turn. Mm-hmm. Is John Tavares saying the right things politically, just publicly, just being the guy he typically is? Do you think there's any animosity towards the organization with how things went down? Not saying there should be, but I mean, he's no longer captain. And, do you believe he is do you believe that he is true in stating that, you know, where he is right now is where he'd like to be until he finally hangs them up?
I do. I mean, I don't find any reason not to believe him. I think it's interesting that they made this move with a year left in the contract rather than just letting Tavares' contract expire and then handing Austin Matthews the captaincy. They wanted a handoff. They approached Tavares like after the season, asked him what he thought of it. He didn't have an issue with it. He understood it because, you know, Matthews is going to be the leader of this team. You know, Tavares is 33 going on 34 years old. You know, not to say his career is over with, because I still think he has something to accomplish and he still has something left in the tank. But, you know, his days as a premium core center are probably over with. I mean, he's
Right.
if this move with Nylander center happens, he's a third line center. He's a really good third line center, but he's a third line center. He shifts to like what Joe Pavelski did in Dallas after he signed with them after he left San Jose, or Patrick Marleau in San Jose when he passed the captaincy to Joe Thornton, I believe. So or maybe it was vice versa, but there was a switch in captaincy and there was no animosity there.
Do you think him not having the C any longer will benefit his game, or does it really matter?
I don't think it matters. I mean, you know, I don't think he was overly burdened by the captaincy. I mean, he's just not a vocal guy, but he's a good guy and well respected in the room. I just think this was more about Matthews being one of the best players in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And the blueprint with a lot of NHL teams is make the best player on your team the captain of the team. And Matthews wants to be a leader, and he's taking that mantle on. So I don't think there's any acrimony or animosity in this switch. Now,
right.
What Tavares said about wanting to stay the rest of his career in Toronto is music to Leaf fans' ears. If it is based on the fact that he recognizes that he's not going to be an $11 million player anymore, that, you know, if he follows the blueprint of Jason Spezza and of Mark Giordano and takes less. Now, he's not going to take $800,000. I mean, you know, because those players were further on in their career. They were in their late 30s and they wanted to finish their career.
Well, if the Leafs offered him that, shame on them.
Right? Yeah, no. If you will, okay, for a player of Tavares' talent, and I expect him to score 25 to 30 goals this year, 60 to 70 points. That's worth at least $5 million a year. That's a 50% cut in his salary. If they get him at that, I think, you know, 5.5 for 4 years spike. That's probably, I think. Now, I don't know if they want to do 4 years. Maybe they'll do 3. You know, remember he's 34, so you know and you front load the contract, and maybe you make it buyout proof in the case he trails off at the end of the deal. But the most important thing is he wants to stay here. I think he recognizes that with this team potentially having to pay players like Matthew Nyes, like Jake McCabe, maybe like Mitch Marner, although I doubt it, that they're going to have to get the money from other places. And Tavares going down from $11 million to a lesser salary is going to be one of them. Now, McCabe, Elliot Friedman said in May that the Leafs wanted to extend McCabe. Mm-hmm. So McCabe came out this week. I think it was Luke Fox from Sportsnet asked him the question, and he's like, I love Toronto. I've loved it here. I want to stay here. I mean, that's great. Now, the problem is McCabe, they got him, and the reason he cost a first and second round pick in that deal, the Lafferty-McCabe deal with Chicago that Dubas pulled off, is because they gave him a first and second to retain 50% of his salary for over 2 years. He's a $2 million cap hit. If you look at the defensemen who are comparable, who have just signed contracts over the last little while. Now, maybe you lessen the amount because from an unrestricted free agent like a Matt Roy, but a Matt Roy is a similar type of player, and he's making close to $6 million. And Esa Lindell with Dallas is making $5.25 million. That's more along the lines of what I think McCabe is shooting for. Again, the increase from $2 million to over $5 million, you're going to have to get that money someplace.
Well, when number 16 is on another team next year, and whether they lose him just because, or they trade him, there's going to be money available to help accommodate the raises that you'll have to pay guys like McCabe, Nyes, whomever else is in line for more money because they've earned it.
It could mean trading Timothy Liljegren after this year.
Right.
But, I see that, McCabe is a fit with this organization. He's, I think he's turning 31. He's a physical defenseman. He plays top 4 minutes. He's a penalty killer. He's, he hits. There's a lot of things that sort of fit with the Brad Treliving model and the Craig Berube model. So, and he wants to stay. So I think a deal will get done. Now, the nice thing, and I said this during the summer, sign him now. Before he is slated to play first line left wing with Matthews and Marner.
He's in line potentially for a really big year, and it's only going to cost them more. Now, would Matthew Nyes, knowing the potential that he has to evolve his career to the next level and be compensated for it as such, would he refrain from signing now with the belief that there's more money to come if he just hangs on a little bit?
Well, he was sort of cagey when asked the question. He basically said, I'll let my agents discuss the matter with Leaf management. I think he likes it in Toronto. Mm-hmm. He's got his Arizona-born buddy Austin Matthews. That they're thick as thieves when they're in Arizona. They're playing tennis with each other, and now they're going to be line mates. And I think the Leafs realize they've got a bell cow here, a big, tough, physical, talented forward. You're probably looking, and somebody brought it up in the chat, and I was going to bring it up, the Dylan Guenther contract that was signed by Utah. Same age, 21 years old. Now, Guenther scored 18 goals in 45 games last year, which is, that's a 30 goal pace. Mm-hmm. Now he scored 15 goals as a rookie, but I think he's going to be, with Matthews and Marner, he's going to score 30 goals. It behooves you to sign him as early as possible because, if he puts up big numbers, then the price is only going to go up. It's probably going to cost you in the $6.5 to $7 million range. Right. And so if you take that, and if you take McCabe, and now you can counteract that with trading Liljegren maybe after the year, or the decrease in Tavares's contract. But remember, Joseph Woll's extension kicks in. That goes up from less than $1 million to almost $4 million. Where's the money coming from, folks? Number 16. Mm-hmm. I continue to think that Mitch Marner, I don't care, and I'm sorry. Good luck, Mitchy, I said. And I love Marner's talent, but good luck. I'm not going to talk about the contractual situation. I'm here to talk about this season. Good luck. You're going to hear about it. What
did you want him to say?
Oh, no. I understand why he said it. It's just not going to work. Maybe from the Toronto media, who are very respectful, and if they ask the question, he'll just ignore it. But it's going to be on the lips of every talk show and every fan from here until July 1st of next year. It's going to be. You can't stop it. So, good luck.
That in and of itself is, an annoying possibility that'll most likely become a reality. Talking about something that none of us really have any effects over, right, or that we can control. Like, the Leafs will trade him if they can find a willing trade partner, and if it makes sense for them economically and from a franchise building perspective. Or they'll just run out the clock, let his contract expire, and all of the money they would have paid him will go to the guys that we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, right? Trading him away is what a lot of fans would like if value comes back, but let's not forget that value will also need to be compensated. And if there's only so many ducats to go around with, a lot of internal personnel who will be deserving of more money, how the hell do you pay everyone? I mean, we can call all of these details and the things we're talking about minutia, but it's really, really important as we're on the cusp of another season beginning, at least from a preseason perspective. Leafs, Ottawa. Real quick on the Senators, and I don't want to deviate too much from the Leafs, but just because they're playing the Senators tonight, what are you expecting from that team? You did mention that as a whole, the Atlantic may have regressed a little bit. Does that mean opportunity knocks for a team like the Senators?
Well, it's a lot depends on Linus Ullmark, who, I saw a lot of in Buffalo in front of a sort of mediocre defensive team, and he wasn't great. And then he goes to a great defensive team in Boston and wins a Vezina. I mean, I considered Ottawa a mediocre defensive team. Now, maybe Travis Green gets better defensive play out of him, out of them, and they play better in front of him. And if they do, then they could improve, because there's a lot of talent there. Stützle and Tkachuk and Batherson and Shabbat. But, their defense is not as good because they traded Jacob Chikrin, and Jake Sanderson's a good defense. There's a lot of talent there, and there's some underlying talent there as well, but it's got to all come together. So it's possible that they could challenge for a wild card spot. I mean, in the Eastern Conference, I think there are 5 or 6 teams that are on the bubble for the 2 wild card spots, and teams like Buffalo, teams like Detroit and Ottawa are those, and maybe Tampa Bay, if they slip a little bit, are in the mix, along with the Islanders and maybe 1 or 2 others in the Metro division. So, I mean, it's potentially they could be a playoff contender, but a lot of things have to come together. Like in Detroit. Detroit has 4 goalies. One of those goalies is going to have to stand up. They have some real good talent. They have, Patrick Kane looked like Patrick Kane last year in a limited window, but can they put it all together? Can Buffalo keep the puck out of the net? Can they score goals? Can they, improve under Lindy Ruff? I mean, there's a lot of ifs. If. I think there are less ifs with 3 teams in the Atlantic: Florida, Boston, and Toronto. There are questions, but I think those teams are sort of at a higher level than Tampa or the other teams that I mentioned.
So what are you expecting from the preseason, from this group in the preseason? What do you want to see when they drop the puck in the next 3 weeks and get things going officially? Last couple of words to you, Mike, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the players that we're focused on. We know what we have from Austin Matthews. We know what we have from certain players. It's what we can learn about Easton Cowan, what we can learn about Topi Niemela, what we can learn if Matt Murray plays, whether he's back to being a good NHL goaltender. There are players, we get to see Nikita Grabankin play against NHL caliber talent. So, I mean, the veteran players, I think all you're hoping for from the veteran players is don't get hurt, Chris Tanev. Don't get hurt, Max Pacioretty. Stay healthy. And the season starts in early October, and I think it's October 9th. Let's have a completely healthy group go into the season, and then, the Leafs can start the 82-game long slog toward the playoffs.
And there are positional battles, players fighting for spots on the roster. That's going to be fun to watch. I mean, if Mitch Marner doesn't do much in the preseason, it really doesn't have or give you any indication of how things are going to go for him in the regular season, or vice versa. He sets the world on fire when it really doesn't count. So what? We want to see what he can do in April when it does count. And if it doesn't go right, you're gone. And in the case of the season to come, the end may also mean the parting of ways of Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs after about a 10-year union. What do you have going on for this week, Mike, and how can people follow what you do on a daily basis, because you're one of the best in the business?
Well, on the Leafs page, it'll basically be, tracking what happens in the preseason games and finishing off my top prospects piece that I've been doing throughout August and September. I usually do that into the late preseason. It's sort of a writing project that I keep doing because and we know how the prospects evolve. So I'll be continuing that at Hockey Buzz, and obviously if anybody's interested in the Sabres, which I would seriously doubt since they're watching this podcast, but I do Sabres content for the Hockey News.
And we really do appreciate everything that you do, Mr. Augello. Like the content, subscribe to the channel, guys. We have a daunting task ahead of us. 5,000 subs when it's all said and done. So tell your friends. We need 800 people to come on board in the meantime. Who knows, we might surprise ourselves. Ford employee pricing wraps up at the end of September, so you have about a week to go. Reach out to me now at Norm at Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram. I can get you on the road for next to nothing. Full warranty, lots of tech, lots of safety. The ergonomics are over the top. You've got to let me know that you need to be on the road, and I will get you on the road in the right way at the right price point. And by reaching out to me, even to bandy about some opportunities when it comes to car sales, you are by extension supporting the podcast that you love so much. Jacksonville, Buffalo on Monday Night Football, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
How excited are you? Your Bills are 2-0.
I'll be more excited if they win Monday because Jacksonville is the team. And you know how the Bills seem to have Miami's number?
Right.
Well, Jacksonville is the team that has Buffalo's number. They think they beat them 5 of the last 6 times that they've played each other. So even, they lost to Urban Meyer when he was, who was a terrible NFL coach.
Right.
They lost to him when he was in Jacksonville. So if they can win on Monday, then I'll truly be excited. But I expect them to lose on Monday. So
you expect them to lose every year?
Yeah.
0-16 every single season.
Well, 0-17 now. But yes.
0-17. Jeez, I got to stay up to date. For Mr. Augello, I'm Norm. Thanks for being here. The Convo will return. Who knows? Maybe in a week, maybe sooner. We're out of here. Have a great week, guys.